My name is Michael, and the night I caught Rachel and Daniel together is a night I will never forget, not because of the betrayal, but because of the way everything I thought I knew about myself snapped into place when I decided to refuse being a victim. Rachel and I had been married for 9 years. We built a life together that, from the outside, looked steady. A little house, 2 cars, comfortable routines. But like many stories that end badly, the trouble began with small silences that grew loud. Lately she had been coming home late, dodging questions about work, and always checking her phone when I walked into the room. The first time I suspected something, I confronted her gently. She promised it was nothing, and I wanted to believe her, because I loved her and because I wanted to trust the family we were making. But trust isn't something you can will into existence when the evidence keeps stacking up, and one evening I came home early from a business trip and found the front door unlocked, the living room dark, and shoes by the couch that weren't mine. My heart sank, but I pushed the fear down and crept up the stairs. The bedroom door was ajar. I pushed it open and saw them, Rachel and a man I'd only heard her laugh about at a party, Daniel, sitting on the bed in a raw, close conversation that needed no words to explain what had been happening behind my back. I didn't shout. I didn't throw things. For a second I just stood there, the air in my lungs cold, the world narrowing to the sound of my own breathing and the quick intake from those 2 faces as they realized the life they'd been hiding had an audience. Daniel's expression hardened first, and he pushed past me, trying to close the door. Rachel scrambled, wild and guilty, and before I could move Daniel had shoved me hard against the frame. I stumbled, angry and stunned, and when I reached to steady myself Daniel grabbed my wrist and twisted it, fury bleeding into physical force. Rachel lunged too, pushing and slapping, words and fingers and shame all blending into an ugly tableau. I could have fled, called someone, begged for mercy, any of the options a frightened man might choose, but something in me steadied. I remember thinking, no more. Not this time. I grabbed my phone with my free hand, not to record for revenge but to summon help, and I dialed 911 while holding Daniel off with the strength I didn't know I had. The dispatcher's voice in my ear was calm, and the seconds stretched like hours, but the officers arrived. They separated us, took statements, and my wrist throbbed where Daniel had been rough. I had bruises, yes, but nothing permanent, and more important than the marks was the realization that betrayal had become violence and I had the right to defend myself and to seek justice. The arrest was not cinematic or quick. There were officers, questions, the awkwardness of neighbors peeking through curtains, but it was thorough. Daniel was taken into custody for assault, and Rachel was taken in for violating restraining conditions from earlier arguments I hadn't thought would matter until that night. In the days that followed, the hushed shame and the whispers of friends were hard to bear, and I slept on my brother's couch while the house became evidence and the scent of our life together was catalogued by professionals. I had to sign a temporary restraining order. I had to explain to magistrates what had happened without letting my hurt become a spectacle. But the clearest part of that legal slog was how the law gave me a structure to stand in when everything personal had crumbled. Police reports, photographs of injuries, witness statements from the neighbor who had called when she heard raised voices, and then the slow, grinding mechanics of the prosecution. Rachel tried to call and beg while Daniel sat in a cell, his bravado gone, but I kept the calls, the texts, the frantic apologies, and the pleas for mercy, in a folder I turned over to my lawyer, evidence of consciousness of guilt more than anything, and a reminder that love and forgiveness are complex when they come from the same mouth that justified betrayal. People asked if I wanted revenge. I did not. I wanted accountability, safety, and a life where I could sleep without watching the doorway. In court, the prosecutor laid out the sequence plainly. Betrayal led to confrontation, confrontation escalated to assault, assault led to arrest. The judge weighed past complaints, past counseling attempts Rachel insisted upon, and the severity of the incident. Daniel received a sentence for assault and was ordered to attend anger management classes, perform community service, and was given a restraining order barring him from any contact with me. Rachel's case was more complicated. Our marriage and the history we shared complicated a legal system that must balance private relationships with public safety. But ultimately she was held to account as well, ordered into counseling and given conditional probation that restricted her contact with me and required regular check-ins. The legal outcome was not a triumph, it was a boundary. It allowed me to reclaim my home and my dignity without stooping to the petty satisfactions betrayal might tempt. Rebuilding was messy and slow. I changed the locks, installed cameras not out of spite but for the plain security of sleeping without fear, and I found strength in small ordinary acts. Making coffee, fixing the squeak in the porch step, going to work each morning. Friends who stayed were the kind that showed up without judgment. Others drifted away, uncertain how to stand with someone who had been publicly betrayed. In time I began therapy to work through the shock and to unpack why I tolerated warning signs for so long, and that process taught me that courage isn't just confronting the person who wronged you. It's having the bravery to build a life where the harm can't find purchase again. Months passed, and the courtroom memories faded in intensity though not entirely in import. Daniel served his time, emerging smaller and more bitter than before, and Rachel moved out of the house and into her parents' home, both of them left with the ruins of choices they had made. I won't pretend the pain disappeared. It left a scar, as all emotional wounds do, but life returned in new textures. Quiet dinners alone, real conversations that didn't require translation, and a slow reclaiming of trust in myself. People sometimes ask if putting them in jail fixed anything. The honest answer is no. Jail didn't fix the betrayal, the marriage, or the years we lost to small lies. What it did was enforce a consequence that protected me and gave me space to heal. And in that space I found something I hadn't felt in a long time. Certainty that I would not be broken by someone else's choices, that violence would not be the final chapter of my story, and that accountability, however uncomfortable, can be the first step toward a safer, truer life.